No one had seen Princess Charlotte in over an hour. She'd missed her private lesson, her lunch, her check-in with the royal aide. And Queen Camilla wasn't worried, she was furious. Marching through the palace halls with a polished cane in hand, snapping at staff, snarling at guards. She wants to hide from me. I'll teach her what hiding gets you. But it wasn't a game. It wasn't disobedience, it was survival. Because deep inside the lowest wing of Windsor Castle, past a forgotten staircase, behind a rusted cellar door, one locked cabinet sat sealed from the inside. And when the royal guard found it, covered in dust and cobwebs, he heard something, a child's whisper. "Please go away. She'll find me. Don't let her know I'm here. She'll kill me." Now before we show you what he did next, and the truth he dragged out of that darkness, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell, because today's story was almost never discovered. The bells of Windsor struck the half-hour mark, a low, sonorous chime that echoed gently through the western wing of the estate. Tutors adjusted their ledgers. Silver tea trays were rotated out and replaced. In the elm chamber, the afternoon's etiquette instructor stood uncomfortably near a carved reading lectern, her gloved fingers pinched lightly around a correction rod she never used. A place setting had been arranged precisely on the velvet-trimmed table, ready for Princess Charlotte's posture drill. But Charlotte never arrived. The clock ticked louder with each passing minute. The tutor exchanged a glance with a footman, then with a lady in waiting. Still, nothing, no footsteps, no child's voice, no announcement. And then the door banged open. Queen Camilla entered like a thunderclap. She wore a long burgundy coat, the hem stiff and swaying around her ankles, but what drew everyone's eye was what she carried. A thin, polished stick clutched tightly in her right hand, not ceremonial, not decorative. The varnish was chipped near the handle from repeated grip. It was the same training cane she had used for years behind closed doors, passed off to others as a relic from her riding days, but always nearby when her voice sharpened. "She's late," Camilla hissed, her voice too controlled to be calm. 10 minutes. She knows what happens when she ignores instruction. The tutor cleared her throat. "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." "She's testing me," Camilla snapped, already moving toward the inner hallway. "And you let her." She didn't wait for a reply. The cane tapped once on the hardwood floor, then again, louder as she stalked down the corridor. Her pace quickened, her shoulders hunched. A quiet fury curled around her mouth as she muttered under her breath, "She thinks she can humiliate me and hide. But I'll show her what happens when she skips her lesson. I'll teach her this time." A passing housekeeper paused mid-step, glancing at another staffer folding linens nearby. They didn't speak, but the air shifted. It wasn't discipline. It was something worse. Camilla searched the drawing rooms first, then the music corridor, then the alcove behind the tapestry display. She gripped the cane like a promise. She wasn't shouting yet, but the rage sat just behind her teeth. "Charlotte!" No answer. The sound of her voice echoed back down the stone walls, trailing into silence. She picked up speed, sweeping past footmen, ignoring the puzzled faces. One maid asked if something was wrong. Camilla didn't even slow down. "Hide and seek, is it?" she growled, teeth bared now. "Let's see how long you enjoy hiding when it's my hand waiting at the end of it." She headed toward the south gallery next, eyes scanning every doorway, every curtain fold, every bench. The tapping of her cane against the limestone floor grew more erratic, louder, angrier. But something was missing. A sound, a voice, a laugh. Even the accidental clatter of a child in motion. The palace was still. Too still. By now, staff had begun whispering in side corridors. A guard at the southern stairwell tapped twice on his comm, requesting eyes on the princess's last known location. No response. From one end of the castle to the other, it became clear. Princess Charlotte was missing. Not misplaced. Not wandering. Gone. And what no one said, Not yet, not aloud, was the thought that took root behind every exchanged glance. If she's hiding, it's not because she's playing, it's because she's afraid. The eastern side of Windsor was silent in a different way, not elegant, not tense, just forgotten. A corridor of grey stone and creaking panels, mostly unused except by staff or guards, sweeping the far wings. Here the castle showed its age, to cracks near the moulding, air colder than the rest of the estate, and the sound of every footstep hanging too long in the rafters. Sergeant Aldric Rowe walked alone. He didn't carry a ceremonial rifle today, not on internal duty, just a side radio, an encrypted clipboard, and the quiet instincts that had kept him from making mistakes for 12 years in the uniform. His posture was steady, alert but unhurried, his eyes tracking details as if reading a second language. A thin crack of light under a supply room door. A fingerprint smear on a pane that shouldn't have been opened. Dust disturbed on a baseboard. He logged it all. Then, from somewhere down the west-adjacent corridor, he heard it. Tap, tap, tap. A hard sound on stone. Irregular, rhythmic. And a voice. Female, sharp-edged, echoing as if carried by bone rather than air. "Charlotte!" Rowe didn't flinch, but he paused. Tap, tap, tap. Camilla. Her voice was not merely calling, it was slicing, clipped syllables, controlled rage, and behind it a tone that every experienced guard could recognize when it turned wrong, not command, but punishment rehearsed in advance. He stepped forward slowly, just enough to peer around the corner as she passed the hallway, one level above. Her cane slapped a pillar as she turned. Her voice was rising now, loud enough to catch echoes across the south gallery ceiling. "Do you want me to find you, Charlotte? Because I will." Rowe's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His orders weren't to intervene in parenting matters, but this didn't feel like parenting. It felt like something breaking open. He resumed his patrol toward the servants' stairwell. The air was colder here. No heating vents. No skylight. The kind of place no royal child had reason to wander. That's when he saw it. On the chipped wooden trim, just above the lower stairwell, a snag of pale blue thread, tangled like a whisper on a splinter. Rowe leaned closer. Not cotton, not utility fabric. Sweater wool, fine gauge. And the colour? The exact hue of Princess Charlotte's morning cardigan. He remembered. He'd seen her in it that very morning on the west portico, pale robin's egg blue with a white stitch near the shoulder. His eyes narrowed. Below, the servants' staircase dropped into a half-lit gallery few people used anymore. Dust pooled thick on the bottom steps. He reached for the small torch clipped to his belt and descended slowly. Halfway down, he paused. A sound rose from the dark below. Click, clink. Not loud, but distinct. Like an old lock turning, not from outside, but from inside. He held still. No breeze, no movement, but the sound had been real. He knew it like a heartbeat. He descended fully now, boots rolling heel to toe, eyes sweeping the shadows. It was darker down here. The overhead light flickered, then steadied. Old wiring. He passed a row of long-forgotten delivery crates, some labelled in decades-old calligraphy. His boots slid slightly on the dust. No recent footsteps. But then, faint, near the edge of the corner, one bare print, barely formed, like a child had stepped wrong and dragged their toe. Beside it, a faint impression from a heel. Rowe followed it. Just beyond the next alcove stood a rusted cabinet, tall, old, out of place. Victorian ironwood with claw feet, heavy hinges, and a dull brass keyhole. Its corners were webbed. The dust on top, thick enough to record the date with a finger. But something was off. The cabinet doors were sealed, yet a key lay dropped just to the right of the base, and the dust along the front had been disturbed. A child had been here. Recently. He stepped forward slowly, one hand moving instinctively to his comm, but he didn't touch it yet. He bent closer. The cabinet lock had been turned from inside. He straightened slowly, breath controlled, eyes narrowing. What kind of child would climb into a cabinet no one ever checks? And what would it take for her to lock herself inside? He didn't know the answer yet, but he knew something now with complete certainty. There was someone down here, and she didn't want to be found. The stone steps groaned under Sergeant Aldric Rowe's weight as he descended into the lowest annex beneath the east wing, a forgotten corridor of Windsor Castle that hadn't hosted a human voice in years. The air grew colder with each step, not the sharp cold of winter wind, but the damp, still chill of buried stone, the kind that clung to the skin and didn't leave. Only a single light buzzed overhead, flickering with fatigue. Its glow barely reached the edges of the narrow stairwell. Every footstep left a print in the dust. The bottom opened into a broad cellar gallery, storage for things even the archivists had forgotten. Long wooden crates with wax seals, faded tarps draped over cracked plaster busts, broken ceremonial chairs stacked beside corroded wall sconces. And silence. A heavy, padded kind of silence. Rowe's torch scanned slowly across the interior. There were no footprints, no breath trails. But then, on the far side, half concealed behind a partition of canvas-covered art panels, something broke the pattern. Tiny prints. Not adult-sized, not heavy, just the faint scuffs of a child's heel brushing across old dust. They weren't running prints, not sprint marks. They were too slow, wandering, conflicted, as if the child hadn't known where she was going, just that she had to disappear. Rowe followed. The prints trailed toward an older corner of the annex, where moisture had soaked the stone near the outer wall, and spiderwebs hung across empty frames like abandoned veils. There, standing against a load-bearing column, was an object that didn't belong. A tall Victorian display cabinet, 6 feet high, double doors, brass fittings. The kind used for public gallery showings a century ago, but this one wasn't displayed. It had been abandoned. Its hinges were rusted. One of the carved feet was cracked. The corners were thick with cobwebs. A shattered glass panel on the lower left had been filled with paperboard, now bowed from age. Rowe approached slowly. Dust coated the top like a second roof, undisturbed except right near the front seam. A line of clean wood interrupted the grey, a finger-width swath where something or someone had recently handled it. Then he saw the key. It lay just off to the right side, not on a shelf, not on a hook, but on the floor, half embedded in the dust as if dropped. Its teeth were tarnished bronze, its shape unmistakable, and the lock turned fully from inside. Rowe bent slowly and brought his ear to the seam between the doors. Nothing. No wind, no breath, no whisper. But the cabinet didn't sit right. The dust around its base was broken, scuffed, not from the outside, but pushed outward, as though something inside had shifted. He raised his gloved hand and pressed lightly against the glass. The pane was colder than the surrounding air, and yet there, in the upper right corner, condensation. Not from a climate issue, not from the cellar, from breath. A child's shallow exhale, repeated over time, in a sealed cabinet. Rowe's heart rate slowed, not from panic, but precision. His hand dropped to the side of his belt and hovered just above his emergency comm. He didn't press it yet. Instead, he scanned the perimeter. No signs of staff. No patrols nearby. If what he was thinking was true, every second mattered. He placed one palm flat against the centre of the cabinet and whispered softly, "Your Royal Highness, can you hear me?" No answer. But the faintest tap came from inside. Soft, controlled, as if someone, very small, very frightened, had waited for that voice. A place like this wasn't a hiding spot. It was a place you crawled into, when you didn't think anyone would look. A place you went not to be found, but to disappear. And something had driven her there. The cellar staircase creaked again. Not with Rowe's measured weight this time, but with a sharper, harsher rhythm. Someone descending fast, angry, breathing hard. Rowe didn't move. He kept one hand on the cabinet and the other hovering near his radio, eyes fixed on the darkness of the stairwell. Then her voice cut through the dust-thick air. "Charlotte! Enough of this nonsense!" Queen Camilla's words hit the stone walls like thrown glass, sharp, splintering, unmistakably enraged. She reached the bottom landing, still gripping the varnished cane in her hand. Her hair, normally meticulously set, had loosened slightly from her hurried search. Her coat swung like a curtain behind her as she scanned the cellar with frantic, narrowed eyes. When she spotted Rowe, she didn't slow. She strode across the floor, heels striking the stone with clipped aggression. "What are you doing down here?" she snapped. Rowe stepped slightly to the side, enough to shield the cabinet from her direct approach without making it look deliberate. "Ma'am, this annex isn't secure for minors. I'm conducting a safety sweep." Camilla scoffed, gesturing sharply with the cane. "Charlotte ran off after being reprimanded. She's hiding, trying to play victim. That child needs to learn obedience, not coddling." Rowe didn't react, but inside something cold shifted. Reprimanded. Obedience. Victim. Terms no guardian should use for a child, especially one who'd vanished into a forgotten wing of a castle. Camilla stepped closer, her eyes scanning the dust patterns on the floor. "She came through here," she muttered, more to herself than to him. "Of course she did. Always running. Always defiant." Rowe maintained his calm posture. "She may be frightened, ma'am. We should approach this carefully." Camilla whipped her head toward him. "Frightened? She should be ashamed." Rowe's jaw tightened, but he kept it restrained. "Ma'am, she knows what happens when she refuses to sit still for her training." Camilla's voice cracked into a deeper, uglier tone. "She humiliated me this morning, in front of staff. Do you think I'll let that stand?" There it was, the truth she hadn't meant to say aloud. Rowe shifted slightly, just enough to angle his body between her and the cabinet. Not aggressively, not challengingly, just present. Camilla's eyes flicked to the motion, narrowing. "What are you standing in front of?" she demanded. Rowe didn't answer. A soft, almost inaudible sound broke the impasse. A tiny, sharp inhale. Not from him, not from Camilla. From inside the cabinet. Camilla froze, head snapping toward the noise, but she didn't hear it, not fully. Her anger drowned out her instincts. She stepped forward, cane lifting slightly as if prepared to swing it open herself. Rowe blocked her path. "Ma'am, stop!" Camilla's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "Move!" Rowe didn't. "This wing is unsafe. The princess may be inside something she cannot get out of. I need you to step back." Camilla's rage sharpened into something almost feral. "You think I put her in there?" she hissed, eyes flashing. "You think I would waste my time hiding her like cargo?" Rowe didn't blink. He didn't have to answer. She answered herself. "I didn't put her in anything," she spat. "If she crawled somewhere she shouldn't, that's her fault. She knows I'm not finished teaching her." The cane trembled slightly in her hand, not from fear, from anticipation. Rowe's stomach hardened. This wasn't discipline. This wasn't frustration. This was intimidation. This was fear turned inward by a child. This was why one small, terrified and desperate had locked herself inside a place meant for forgotten objects. A place no one would think to search. He took one step forward. Controlled, measured, resolute. Camilla saw it, and for the first time since she entered the cellar, she took half a step back. Not from him, from what she knew he was about to uncover. Without another word, Rowe reached for the cabinet's corroded handle, and Camilla, gripping her cane tight enough to blanch her knuckles, whispered, trembling with fury, "Do not touch that door." But it was already too late. For one suspended moment, the cellar hung in absolute stillness. Camilla's warning, "Do not touch that door," still quivered in the air, but Sergeant Aldric Rowe no longer heard her. His focus had narrowed into a single point: the brass lock on the Victorian cabinet, old, rusted, turned inward. A lock only a frightened child would use. Camilla lunged first. She moved with surprising speed for her age, stepping directly between him and the cabinet, her cane raised like a barrier. Her voice sharpened into something brittle and dangerous. "This is a private matter, Sergeant. I will handle it. You will not touch anything in this room." Rowe remained unmoving, posture straight, expression unreadable. His training kicked in. Not the ceremonial routines visitors saw, but the deeper protocols reserved for emergencies. Threat assessment, prioritization, preservation of life. "Ma'am," he said, voice low but unshakable, "if a minor royal is inside that cabinet, it is no longer private." Camilla's face contorted, splintering between fury and panic. "She is manipulating you," she snapped, "running from her duties, from me. You guards let her get away with everything." Rowe didn't respond. He stepped to the right. Camilla stepped with him. He stepped left. She blocked. Her breathing grew harsher. "Sergeant, I am ordering you to—" He didn't allow the sentence to finish. He moved, not fast, not aggressive, but with the smooth precision of a man who had spent his adult life learning exactly how to step around a human obstacle without escalating force. He turned his shoulder just enough to break her line of interception, and in a single quiet motion, he slid past her reach. Camilla grabbed for his arm, reflexively, desperately, but he removed her hand with practiced firmness, neither hurting her nor allowing her grip to slow him. "Enough," he said. 2 syllables. Calm. Final. Rowe stopped directly in front of the cabinet. The smell of old dust and cold wood rose around him. He ran his gloved fingers along the keyhole, its edges gritty with corrosion. The lock had been jammed from inside, but not fully engaged. It wouldn't hold under pressure. Behind him, Camilla's voice trembled in a way Rowe hadn't heard before. Not fear for a child, but fear for exposure. "You open that door," she whispered, "and you'll regret it." Rowe didn't answer. He lowered himself slightly, bracing one knee for leverage. He slid the emergency edge of his ceremonial blade, blunt, curved, designed for emergency cutting, not combat, into the seam between the doors. A puff of dust drifted down. He applied pressure. The hinges groaned. Corroded metal resisted, then snapped with a brittle crack. Camilla flinched. Rowe pushed again, this time with full, controlled strength. The cabinet doors creaked open, slowly, inches first. Then a gap wide enough for the torchlight to slip inside. Rowe lifted his torch and angled it gently toward the darkness. What appeared inside stole the breath from the room. Princess Charlotte, curled deep in the back corner, small body folded tight to make herself unseen. Her face was pale beneath streaks of dried tears. Her knees were pulled to her chest, hung tightly, her shoes rested flat against the ornate back pane. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, and her eyes, wide, glassy, terrified, blinked hard at the sudden light, as if bracing for a blow. She recoiled instinctively, one hand shooting up to shield her face from the glare. For a split second, she didn't seem to recognize who had opened the door. Rowe dropped instantly to one knee, lowering himself below her eye level, turning the beam away, making himself small, safe, familiar. "Your Royal Highness." His voice softened entirely. "It's me. You're safe. You're safe now. I've got you." The flickering bulb above buzzed. Dust floated through the beam of his torch like snowfall. Charlotte didn't move at first. She stared, frozen, as if waiting to see whether he would turn into something dangerous like the person she had been hiding from. Rowe extended one gloved hand, not touching, just offering, slow, gentle, patient. Her breath hitched. Then, in the quietest motion, she reached out with both shaking hands and collapsed into him. Rowe caught her carefully, lifting her from the cramped cabinet with the tender precision of someone cradling something breakable. Her small fingers dug into the fabric of his uniform, clinging with desperate relief. Behind him, Camilla's cane struck the stone floor. "What is this performance?" she spat. "She wasn't in danger." Rowe ignored her entirely as he wrapped one arm around Charlotte's back, holding her steady, shielding her from sight. Charlotte buried her face into his collar. Rowe stood, and for the first time since the search began, Camilla looked genuinely afraid. Not for Charlotte, but for herself. Charlotte clung to Sergeant Aldric Rowe with the kind of grip children use only when they believe danger hasn't passed, only paused. Her fingers knotted into his tunic, knuckles white, tiny shoulders trembling in uneven bursts. Every shaky breath pressed warm against the fabric of his collar. Rowe didn't rush her. He didn't speak right away. He shifted his stance, widening his feet for stability, and angled his body instinctively to shield her from Camilla's line of sight. But Camilla moved anyway. She stepped forward sharply, her cane clicking against the stone once, twice, each strike louder than the last. "Oh, do stop pretending," she snapped, her voice raw with fury. "She's not frightened. She's manipulating you. She always does this, running away, hiding, looking for sympathy." Charlotte's entire body flinched at the sound. Not recoiled, flinched. Something instinctive, conditioned. Rowe lowered his head closer to her hair, his chin brushing the crown of her head as he whispered, "You're all right. You're with me now." Charlotte tried to pull herself tighter into his chest, burying her face deeper. Her breath stuttered. A small broken whimper escaped her lips. Not loud enough for anyone else to hear, but Rowe felt it against his collar. "Put her down," Camilla demanded. "She can walk." "This drama is unnecessary." Rowe didn't even look at her, but Charlotte did something she hadn't done since he opened the cabinet. She spoke, barely. Her voice scraped out like it had to crawl over bruised fear just to leave her throat. "Please, don't let her touch me." Rowe's fingers tightened protectively around her back. Camilla stepped forward, outrage twisting her words. "You see? Manipulative. She's telling you whatever will—" Charlotte's voice broke again, trembling, whisper thin, yet crystal clear. "She said she was going to hit me." Rowe froze. Charlotte swallowed, breath hitching, and the rest fell out in pieces. Harder this time. The silence after those words felt like the air had turned to stone. Rowe's jaw flexed once, a microscopic movement, but the only sign he allowed himself. His hand rose slightly on her back, a subtle gesture of reassurance. Behind him, Camilla's face drained of colour. "That is not what I meant," she snapped, too fast, too defensively. "She exaggerates. She always exaggerates." But Charlotte wasn't finished. Her voice quivered, but she forced the words out, desperate to release them before courage slipped from her grasp. She said if I embarrassed her again, she'd lock me somewhere. Her breath cracked. "Somewhere no one would find me." Rowe said nothing. He didn't need to. He turned his head just slightly, enough to view the cabinet over Charlotte's small shoulder, rusted hinges, webs, dust. A place untouched for decades. A place where a child could suffocate, or starve, or die silently while the world searched everywhere but there. Camilla's cane wavered at her side. "I didn't say that," she barked, her voice rising too quickly, too loudly. "She misunderstood. She always misunderstands." Charlotte sobbed once, a raw, involuntary sound, and buried deeper into Rowe's chest as if the very tone of Camilla's denial was enough to confirm the truth. He angled his body further, completely blocking Charlotte's view of Camilla. His voice was low, steady, and final. "No more," he said to Camilla without raising his volume. "Not one more word to her." Camilla bristled. "You don't have the authority. I have the duty," Rowe replied, "to protect her from harm, including psychological harm." "Psychological?" Camilla shrieked. "This is disobedience, willful disobedience. I have every right to correct her behaviour." Rowe met her eyes fully now, calm, unwavering, unblinking. "Correction," he said quietly, "does not leave a child shaking in a locked cabinet." Camilla's lips parted, then closed, then parted again. But no argument came. There was nothing left to say. Charlotte's arm slowly reached for Rowe's collar again, gripping tighter than before, fingers curling with unmistakable terror. "Please don't let her come close," she whispered, barely audible. Rowe shifted her weight securely into his arms. "She won't," he murmured. "Not now, not ever again." And this time, Charlotte believed him. Sergeant Aldric Rowe didn't waste a second. With Charlotte still cradled in his arms, he turned from the cabinet and began carrying her up the stone steps, slow and steady, each footfall deliberate, each breath synced with the child's fragile hold on his tunic. She didn't speak again. She didn't need to. Her grip said enough. Behind him, Camilla's voice clawed up the stairwell in pursuit. "You're all being played," she barked. "She's a child. She's clever. She knows how to twist a story." But her shoes didn't follow. She hadn't dared cross the threshold of the broken cabinet. She knew what it meant. And so did Rowe. At the top of the stairs, 2 junior officers caught sight of them rounding the bend, and froze. Charlotte, in a guard's arms, face pale, eyes wide, cardigan damp with sweat and cellar dust. Her cheek pressed against his shoulder like she was bracing for impact even now. One of the officers reached instinctively for his comm. Rowe didn't speak, but the message was clear. "Get Hartwell, now." They moved. By the time Rowe stepped into the adjoining corridor, the temperature had shifted. Staff had gathered silently along the walls. Aides, cleaners, footmen, some holding trays that hadn't been delivered, some still mid-task. Every one of them turned to look. Not at Camilla, at Charlotte. At the child wrapped in a guard's arms, eyes half closed, not from sleep, but from depletion. Her hands had never stopped trembling. Her mouth hadn't fully closed. A maid in her late 20s pressed her hand over her heart as they passed. No one asked what had happened. They didn't need to. When Rowe reached the grand landing outside the Blue Parlour, Senior Protection Officer Marcus Hartwell was already striding down the corridor, comm clipped to his collar, posture like a drawn sword. He stopped cold when he saw the girl. "Where?" he asked, eyes already scanning Charlotte's condition. "Cabinet in the southeast cellar annex," Rowe said. "Locked herself in. No air, no exit." "Wouldn't have survived long." Hartwell's jaw set. "Alone?" Rowe nodded. "Driven there." Hartwell turned to his detail. "Full restriction. Escort Queen Camilla to the North Wing. Secure her communications and immediate mobility. No interaction with minors. Effective immediately." Camilla reached the top of the stairs, just in time to hear it. "You can't be serious," she snapped, voice cracking. "This is absurd." Hartwell's eyes didn't leave her. "Ma'am, you will be escorted to the Green Parlour until internal review is completed. Please comply." Camilla's face twisted. "She humiliated me in front of the staff. She refused to bow. You want to talk about protocol? She spat on it." Charlotte flinched at the sound, not violently this time, but enough to make Rowe turn his body again, sheltering her from the words. "She's not protocol," Rowe said without looking back. "She's a child." Hartwell raised a hand. 2 guards moved to Camilla's flanks. One extended a palm toward the wall, silently gesturing for her to walk. Camilla hesitated, her last moment of resistance clinging to her like sweat. Then Charlotte's voice floated out, not loud, but clear. "Please, don't let her near me again." The words weren't a demand. They weren't even spoken with anger, just fatigue, like the last bit of strength she had left. Camilla heard it. Everyone did. And for the first time, she stopped shouting. She just stood there, blinking, jaw twitching, face frozen in a mask that no longer fit. Rowe didn't wait. He stepped away from the confrontation, adjusting Charlotte's position so her head rested securely beneath his chin. Her breathing had slowed, but her hands hadn't loosened. In the silence that followed, Hartwell issued one final order. Effective immediately, Queen Camilla is suspended from all proximity to Princess Charlotte, pending formal investigation and parental review. Camilla's voice finally cracked. "This is overreaction." Hartwell didn't turn back. "No, ma'am. This is protection." And as Camilla was quietly walked down the corridor, no shouting, no cameras, no press, everyone who watched understood. The rules had changed. And for the first time, she wasn't above them. The message reached Prince William before the full report did. He didn't wait for the transcript, didn't request clarification, didn't call anyone into his study. He simply moved. His footsteps echoed through the south wing faster than royal etiquette allowed, heels hitting the floor with clipped precision, coat half-buttoned, one hand clenched tight at his side. 2 personal aides tried to keep pace, but he waved them off before he cleared the corridor. By the time he reached the blue parlour threshold, Sergeant Aldric Rowe was standing near the tall windows, motionless, still holding Charlotte in his arms. The child didn't stir at William's approach. She didn't raise her head or speak. She simply exhaled shakily and tightened her grip on Rowe's tunic as if bracing for something. William stopped. His eyes landed on her face first. Then the way her knees were pulled in. Then the dust smudges on her sleeves. Then the faint webbing still clinging to her cardigan. Then her hands, clenched white, trembling. Charlotte wasn't asleep. She was hiding, even while being held. "Charlotte," William said softly. She looked up at the sound of his voice, only for a second, and then a crack formed in her silence. "Papa!" That single word wasn't loud, but it shattered every restraint William had left. He stepped forward in one motion and gathered her from Rowe's arms with practiced strength, pulling her tight against his chest. His hand moved instinctively to the back of her head, shielding her from light, from voices, from memory. Charlotte didn't cry. She simply pressed her cheek to his collarbone and held on, like she couldn't trust the floor beneath her unless he was carrying it. William turned to Rowe. "Where was she?" His voice was low, flat, controlled like steel. Rowe stood at rest, posture straight. "Sir?" "Found locked inside a storage cabinet in the southeast annex. Doors secured from the inside. Conditions unlivable. She had no food, no water, no light." William's eyes didn't leave him. "How did she get there?" Rowe didn't speak right away, but Charlotte did. "She was going to hit me," she whispered. "I hid before she could." William's arm pulled her in tighter, one hand covering the side of her head like a shield. The doors behind them opened, not loudly, not ceremonially. Catherine stepped into the room. Her coat was unfastened, her breath short. She froze when she saw Charlotte in William's arms, then took 2 quick steps forward before catching herself. Charlotte turned her head, and for the first time since the cabinet door opened, she reached out. "Mamma." Catherine didn't wait. She crossed the room and took Charlotte into her arms like her body had been waiting for it all day. She held her so close, it looked like she might never let go. Charlotte melted into her mother without a word, the kind of relief that doesn't come with crying, only collapse. William turned back to Rowe. Who else was involved? Rowe didn't hesitate. Queen Camilla arrived mid-discovery, attempted to interfere with recovery, resisted inspection, objected to intervention. Verbal admissions consistent with coercive behaviour. Catherine's eyes blazed over Charlotte's shoulder. Behind them, Camilla, who had not yet been escorted away, stepped from the hallway with her arms folded, trying to steady herself. "She's exaggerating," she said sharply. "She was defiant all morning. She embarrassed me in front of staff." William turned to her, but said nothing. Catherine didn't either. Camilla went on. "I never laid a hand on her. I simply made it clear that consequences—" Catherine's voice sliced through the air, low and frozen. "You terrorized a child." Camilla blinked. William added, his tone dry and final. And you will answer for it." Camilla's lips parted like she wanted to speak again, but this time she didn't. She simply stood there, one hand tightening around the edge of her coat. Charlotte didn't look at her. She kept her face pressed into Catherine's shoulder, small fingers gripping the lapel of her mother's jacket like the fabric was the only thing tethering her to safety. And in that moment, the question wasn't whether a line had been crossed. It was whether it had ever existed in the first place. The Blue Parlour had never felt this quiet. Not during state briefings, not during crises, not even during the days the late Queen's health had failed. This silence was different. It carried weight. William stood with one hand braced on Charlotte's back as she remained curled against Catherine's shoulder, her small fingers gripping the fabric of her mother's coat like it was the only safe anchor left in the world. Catherine murmured to her softly, nothing intelligible, only warmth, only presence. Charlotte didn't reply. She just held on. Rowe remained a few steps back, posture straight, eyes forward, face set in disciplined stillness, but every sense attuned, ready for any command. Camilla stood opposite them, the cane still in her hand, though now she gripped it like a lifeline rather than a weapon. Her face was pale beneath the powder, her mouth set, but trembling faintly in a way she couldn't hide. Hartwell approached William and bowed his head. "Sir, I've issued a temporary isolation order. She won't be permitted within proximity of the children until review." Camilla snapped her head toward him. "You can't." William raised one hand without looking at her, and she froze mid-sentence. His voice was quiet, too quiet. "When she hides from you," he said, "where do you think she gets the idea that no one will save her?" Camilla blinked hard. A beat of silence passed, one in which she seemed to search desperately for a way to shift blame, excuse herself, justify the fear she'd created. But nothing came. Catherine shifted Charlotte slightly, brushing her hair back, her breath hitching at how cold the child felt even through layers. "Her sweater is damp," Catherine murmured. "She must have been in that cabinet for a long time." Rowe spoke for the first time since his report. "Ma'am, the air inside was stagnant. If she hadn't been found soon—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Catherine's hand trembled on Charlotte's shoulder. William's eyes hardened, a slow, icy transition from restrained father to head of family. He turned fully toward Camilla now. "The idea that she might not be found," he said, "came from somewhere." Camilla swallowed. "She misbehaved. She was disrespectful. She ran from her lessons." Catherine's voice snapped like frost breaking. "She hid because she thought you'd hurt her again." Camilla flinched. "She's lying." William's response came without even a shift in tone. Children don't lock themselves in cellar cabinets for attention. Silence. Raw. Terrible. Camilla's eyes darted toward the door as if searching for a single ally. There were none. Staff stood carefully out of the way, not approaching, not even breathing too loudly. The walls themselves seemed to hold judgment. Hartwell cleared his throat, a professional gesture, masking outrage. "We've secured the area, sir. The cabinet is being documented. The wing has been closed off." "Good," William said. His gaze did not leave Camilla. "She will not approach the children until the full board reviews her behaviour." Catherine lowered her head and kissed the top of Charlotte's hair, a soft, trembling kiss that said everything she didn't want to say aloud in front of the others. Rowe remained silent, but William turned to him now. "Sergeant," Rowe stepped forward. "Sir, you acted without hesitation. It was necessary to—" "Sir, you saved her," William said, voice thickening not with emotion, but with the weight of what could have happened. "You may have saved her life." Rowe didn't bow. He only nodded. One precise, controlled movement, the kind used when words would cheapen something sacred. A small voice rose from Catherine's shoulder, then, faint and exhausted. "I hid because I thought she'd hurt me again." Catherine shut her eyes. William exhaled slowly, steadying himself. Camilla's composure fractured, a tiny break, but unmistakable. That child has always William cut her off, not with volume, but with finality. Silence. The command wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. 2 guards stepped behind Camilla, ready to escort her toward the green parlour isolation wing. She gripped her cane so tightly her knuckles went white. "This is a mistake," she said softly. "Not to them, not even to herself, but to the empty air. You'll see. You'll all see." No one replied. The guards led her away. Rowe watched without expression, not gloating, not condemning, just present, steadfast, unmoving. William turned back to him one more time. There was something unspoken in the prince's gaze, respect, trust, an acknowledgement few guards ever earned in their lifetime. Catherine whispered, "Thank you," her voice cracking as Charlotte burrowed deeper into her arms. Rowe nodded once more, then stepped aside as protocol dictated, letting the royal parents leave with their daughter, securing her between them. When the room emptied, Rowe returned quietly through the east corridor, the same one where he'd noticed the first scrap of blue fabric hours earlier. He resumed his post beside the column, hands clasped behind his back, boots aligned, gaze steady on the silent hallway. He didn't shift. He didn't sigh. He didn't let the weight show. He simply stood there. The guard who found the child no one else could find. The guard who broke a cabinet. The guard who faced down a queen and didn't flinch. Would you have opened that cabinet, even if a royal ordered you not to? Should a child ever fear the very person meant to protect them? And what would you have done if you were that guard? Tell us what you think in the comments below. If you believe no title, no rank, no crown should ever place a child above fear, tap that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss what happens next behind palace walls. And with more stories already waiting, click on the next video now, and we'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. For another moment the crown never expected to be witnessed.